Hi, everyone, and welcome to Authors and Artists Festival Rewilding. My name is Lise McLaughlin, and I'm your host from NatureCulture. Our sponsors include the New England Grassroots Environment Fund, Mary King, Kathy Cremens, and Rescue Poetics. The festival is brought to you with help from Nature Imaginarium and Human Error Publishing and SCORE.org. Thank you to our sponsors, our colleagues and presenters, and to you for being here. This session is Writing the Land Poets 2. Each reader will have 9 minutes. Our first reader is Janet MacFadyen.
Thank you for having me. This is great. I will be reading my poem, which is called 5 Interludes, which is a poem in 5 sections that I wrote for the Fanny Stebbins Wildlife Refuge in Longmeadow, Massachusetts. And the piece captures the refuge over the course of about 8 months, from the very end of October to the June solstice, which was, a very transformative experience for me. 5 Interludes. Dusk. On this slip of a floodplain, the kinglets have landed, just in from Quebec, and egrets stop over on their way back to Florida. Canada geese circle lazily in a shimmer of water. A pair of bald eagles wheel overhead. West through the scrubwood, the glint of a railbed. East, past the lacework of trees, the highway. Semi after semi pours by like a river. A plane glides in on the flight path to Bradley, while geese float and doze with heads under their wings. Wind blows up the slough and sets the pin oaks rattling, loud and louder. They have a story to tell. Their leaves quiver with it. The geese tremble, rouse, and gather. A meandering discussion begins. Now they flap their wings. Now they honk. Now they quiet. What to do next? Sleep or take off in a storm of mighty feathers? Which bed tonight? Everyone is rushing home. So I'd never been to Fanny Stebbins before agreeing to be their poet protector. I didn't even know about them. They're about an hour away from here. And so I learned what a critical habitat this refuge is. It's a major stopover for birds migrating as far north as the Arctic and as far south as South America during the spring and fall migrations. So it's hugely popular with birders. But as a poet, I was just fascinated with how full of contradictions the area is. At once, it's so beautiful and yet so squeezed in on all sides by the impacts of humans. You have the highway on one side, you have a road and then a rail bed, and then the Connecticut River, and then across the river you have Six Flags New England Amusement Park, which means in the summer you hear people just screaming all the way across the refuge. So anyway, the wildlife appears to handle it. Bird count. 4 swans in the pond, 6 mallards, 21 geese browse bottoms up, grunting and squeaking, not honking unless you think Model Ts. You can hear a rumble along the train tracks, jangle of crossing gate, truck tires screaming on I-91. A sudden pause. Wind rattles in the dried leaves, then the high, lonesome call of a white-throated sparrow. And then there are times of amazing stillness. You wouldn't know another soul was nearby. Reverie. All is still. The water knurled with ripple, the sky washed out. Light sifts down and then back up. From the silver blue, a pond radiating like metal. Geese float on the mirrored surface, seem to do nothing. No longer sleeping, no longer diving between the red rust pickerel weed. From under their drowsy breasts, reflections spread like go wandering. Pieces of geese and cloud bobbed like little boats in the shimmering. It was especially moving to me to visit Fanny Stebbins in deep winter, which last winter was mostly about snow. It was mostly without snow. So the result was you could see everything was elemental, stripped down to its essence. Soft trees, soft February light. In the high trees, in a filigree of delicate twig and nub, tiny birds lead their private sovereign lives. A flat and open wood of alder, cottonwood, silver maple, oak, the ordered disorder of bramble and grapevine, floodplain bordering the Connecticut with long fingers of marsh, cattails lit like candles by late afternoon sun. Silence. It sifts through everything, even the distant traffic. All is muted, grayed out, the vast winter sleep of dried shrub and straw, of hardened leafless trees, the patient roots waiting in the frozen ground. So I went from February to June without getting back down there. And so when I arrived almost at the June solstice, the refuge was just bursting with life. And it had seesawed from a hard frost in late May, which was only a few weeks before that, to being really hot. Unstoppable June. The ponds have exploded with algae and flowers, petals opening like the mouths of goslings. A lone swan flies off, water no longer a mirror, but shifting tapestry, moss green tufted with tree snags and leaf saucers, all rooted in decay. Oh, there are geese, but they have camouflaged themselves over there in the cattails, slashes of black, brown, white. Now is the season for hatchlings, and the parents are circling, protecting. The air settles like fuzz, sticks to the skin, delivers endless ripplings, trillings, chitterings, tappings, squeakings, thumps, songbirds and a bass bullfrog in concert against the muddied churn of traffic. And then descendant and tinkling of Veery's chandelier. More unstoppable than any highway, egg and seed push through mud and rot, agitating in shallows, clotting underfoot, strewn over asphalt, the light heavy with pollen, days rife, the doe having dropped her fawns, the coyote her pups, and the tight pink buds of water lilies burst the surface like nipples, 1,000-fold. This poem is not about Fanny Stebbins, but still on the theme of abundance and gratitude. It's out of a new manuscript of mine. How I walk into my life when my life is forest. I go out on the deck with my cup to ask the high sky and towering pines, who are you, you great silent watchers? How do I open myself to gratitude? How do I lay myself down for seedlings to take root? How shall I not grind down under the teeming cities? How shall I not grind down the teeming cities under my heels, the microbes and mycelium, lives too tiny for my Jupiter eyes? Tell me, is the world full? Does it ask of me blessings? Or is it a living engine unto itself, and I left speechless behind? I a world, but not in control of the world. Here, look, see what insects fly out of my mouth, what stingers and burrowing hands, the threads of twined blood vessel and fungi spinning the root basket of my ribs, the sky in my lungs billowing out.
Thank you, Janet MacFadyen. Our next reader is Rodger Martin.
Pondicherry Amphitheater. A splendid pack, this blended family, follows the flittering orange monarchs while they parade the old rail bed, flanked with dandelions, brigades of yellow, each slender petal a flower, a lance, for inspection by hummingbird moths. A last coronation before heads off, airborne divisions, and graduation. 4 children attend the church of each rolling stream, where congregations of ferns meditate in prayer against choral backdrops from welcoming warblers. The pastor of the birch ministers his white scrolls and prepares a service of regeneration. as the family gathers at the pulpit of the pond, the presidentials, ranged with remnants of snow, spread before them their sacrament of preservation and baptize each supplicant with light. Pondicherry. Jupiter saddled the blood moon last night for its icy ride through the wild, cold sky, and with it the ambient rush of river, white as the moon and almost as constant. This night, like atoms of a cesium clock, like a resting heartbeat, accuracies lay in rhythms. Orion approved, looked for the bull, alert to all contingencies, and so it went until eclipsed by the light. With the dawn sun, the woolly bears shuffle confidently along wood-framed paths, their sleek brown hairs erect as they hunch their way unconcerned with shadow or yesterday toward the whatever that betters any what if. Three Rivers. Captain White, an eagle pair soar with a juvenile over the tidal kirk that is the East Machias River. Their constant kyries, a supplication to a dream, a belief that what has been done can be undone, were we as constant as the eagle. Along the pleasant, a beaver sculpts the trunk of an oak to a spindle, leaving the tree upright, balanced, like a ball on the nose of a seal who awaits the perfect moment to bring it down. A rowboat is beached nearby along the quiet flats of the Otter. Even were it Michelangelo sitting with his oars, he would know we've exceeded our limits, and his Piata now would be upstream at the falls of the Otter, where salmon once leapt with the eels. Spayrod at sunset. The lowering sun's blinding white, a jagged flare of flash bouncing off the meandering blue of the Miramichi, framed by autumn greens and reds, a conflagration of living color. A woman wades mid-river, a glow about her. She grips the rod, rolls its line into an arc, and snaps it forward. A thin whip of white fire and a shht at the snap as it breaks the limit of sound. I do not mind this piece, this distance stretched to its extremities. And if salmon, lying deep in pools, choose to ignore or decline the fly, why, quibble like a fool. Let them leap instead. The fly, the fisher, the salmon, kindred with water, with blue, with white, all catch and release, all green to this world, a balanced scale our time seldom provides. Sailing Loch Hoy, Scotland. I, over-exuberant tour guide captain, pilot a 40-foot kingdom through the great glen. Golden gorse bounds both shores. Single malt joy flows clear port, clear starboard. Even astern smiles eddy with wake. So much so, I've learned worry. Check the charts. The fault line's where? It moved mountains for millions of years. What buoy did I miss? What rocks lurk behind the point? But there, by the wheel, stands my mate, reminds me steer lightly, ease through the locks, stay true to sun and evening star. And as we mutter toward the ruins of Glengarry, silent as time, daylight almost done, lock still as glass, I give up the wheel. She glides us into berth at last. Then gives me the line, shows me the knots, and how to tie us fast. And I'll finish with two Calhoun family forest poems. After the line of late day squalls, a close blue breeze skits between crust lichen and moss covered limbs. It echoes dappled sunlight, a foot on duff untouched for generations. Elsewhere, too, the sanctity of lost song tugs at the eaves of crowned oak and maple. And what of the feldspar, garnet, beryl, and smoky quartz? Crystals withdrawn on sites which beget lanes and highways to transport them to skylines, those grand monumental shots to nothingness. Let the mica remain. Let it glitter among the tourmaline, faceted testimonials to what we're not, predating all we've ever known. Abandoned pavement and parking of Route 10, after marveling at the great vault of the arched granite bridge lording century and a half over the roaring Ishwillet. Slide onto the squish of March mud ruts frosting on a frozen base hard as granite, and walk upward alongside White Brook, yet to infuse itself with the tannins of this land. Always upward. Follow a nuthatch's arcing flight, its hungry call, upward to a hard-crafted stone stairway and its green rock cap where children and grandchildren rushed for their midnight summer's dreamings. Upward to Porcupine Falls, spring melt spurting through a thin split of the rock. Sit a while. Think on the child you once were, the person you have lost. Let that child frolic a bit in the glen. And then, rested, walk with your memory all the way down. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodger Martin. Our next reader is Diane Raptosh. Welcome.
Thank you. The first three poems that I'm going to read are from the Land Trust series that I did for the Salmon School Garden in Salmon, Idaho, which is basically a crazy ruckus of growth and chaos. For the Salmon School Garden, Salmon, Idaho, after Christopher Smart. For I will consider the garden's address on 1309 Minick Street, for it is near the 45th parallel, halfway between the equator and the North Pole. For its coordinates are 44 degrees north, 113 degrees west. For this great line of earth crosses the valley of the Salmon River. For this solid acre is a rumpus of sunflower stalk and pickling cuke. For the bee balm shakes its tubular blooms. For the yellow-green gourd in that fourth grader's hands is God. For such growth will brew oozes of vegetable goulash. For a girl in the crowd rubbernecks patty pan next to the strawberry patch. For the gray wheelbarrow upends its glaze of rust water. For the new fruiting hops smell of yeast and apple and garlic. For the fruits of these hops are cone-shaped like their parent flower. For the girl in the crowd will outgrow her mother and father. For the hop plants each, in a sense, have a gender. For there is a boy in the crowd whose name is Wren. For he is of the tribe of shoelace, girl boy, sparrow shape. For the soaked straw bales, aligned on edge, arrange themselves in L's. For the letter L is instrument of love's mud leaps and leaf litter glory. For the word mini is baby talk for mother. For the prone dirt hoards its spores of the mother story. For the squash are closer to earth than any quadruped. For the mother composed us, thus we lace and leaf mold her. For mothers quash parts of themselves to feed their children. For the salmon river knows to fetch and carry, which means patience. For the river can catch a cork and toss it again. For that freakish pumpkin daily camels its spine. For that yellow crookneck keeps looking back. For mothers feel their plans for a world shoveled under. For untold soils may one day reline the world. For the river can swim quite fast. For it can royally squirm. Land trust love canticle for the salmon school garden. Hibiscus hosta and lone coreopsis. Oh, say, can you see how love is this rain gush, this land trust, this luster of stone-crop dianthus and rock cress, this moss phlox mukdania, danka, this crocus, that lungwort, these midges, those zinnias, the vinca, that mazy crookneck, this full-blown acre, its straw bale smutches, its era of care, its busload of cold wheelbarrows, its chain link yeses, its dust, its sand, its ants, its tuts, its sunflower, its each echinacea, its milkweed, its beaverhead backdrop, its cattails, its squash holes, its elk smell, its deer scat, its kids in the cuke thatch, its serious lees of bee balm, its tisks, its trusses, its furred serviceberry, its home herbs, its sea dirt, its unhurried ruckus. We bipeds here, larval, our thanks for your opus. Salmon School Land Trust Sutra. The land trusts only this. Its stems are czars. Our us is nuts. So let this be the verse, my chums, my loves, oh, my sun-dipped oarsman. The last poem is not from that Land Trust series, but it is called Cow. There is nothing cooler than a horse playing the piano, unless it is a cow parachuting from an elm or a mule deer prancing through an ancient church. Given the chance, words ride you straight out of woundedness, then slowly leave you living on feeling's front lines. Regarding the world, I share none of its needs and refuse its treacheries. Were I to pen words to the dead, I would ask first, was the majesty made this mutably strange during your springtime on earth? And maybe, what does my voice ring like to you? A Cooper's hawk, grouse, or coyote? A racket of singing verbs? Dear dead, I remember when I was not. And I'd be untrue not to say how my life has been a real tongue trip, a Model O baby grand, this lark that lucked out on some miracle cow's teat of plenty. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane Raptosh. Lovely to hear that read out loud. Our next reader is Indigo Eriksen.
Hi, thank you, Liz. Thank you so much for your extraordinary labor of love in putting this together and all of the anthologies. I just cannot appreciate you enough, or I can't imagine how busy your brain is. And thank you to the poets for being here who've shared their work and who will share. I am Indigo. I live in Virginia, and the land that I'm a part of is the Piney Grove Preserve down in southeastern Virginia on the North Carolina border, and I'm about 3.5 hours north of it. I've been to my land twice, and I had a really wonderful hour-long Zoom workshop about it. And so I have 3 poems in progress to share today, and also 1 or 2 others. But it feels like such a unearned privilege to be a poet of the land, and I have been just treated so generously by the Nature Conservancy, who takes care of the land. Part of what they're doing is planting longleaf pine, which is habitat for the red-cockaded woodpecker, which was endangered and now has been downgraded to threatened, which is good, but also, it's still threatened. And they've been so kind to welcoming me there, and they said you can come anytime you want. We recommend not coming during hunting season. They gave me the codes to the gates so I can get into access any of the lands. They're like, we don't really allow camping, but you can camp here. We don't allow dogs, but you can bring your dogs. They do have a hunting club that has dogs, and I just think, like, what a privilege. But then I just can't help but think about the tension between me as a poet being allowed access to the land and being trusted with the land and the secret keys and codes, and how so many people are not allowed on the land. And then I think about the way that a lot of our species treats the land. And so there's good reason for, like this space exists because we haven't done such a good job taking care of the land and species in this country. But then I think about the people who've been dispossessed of their land here and elsewhere, and labor that's gone into the centuries of land. So my work explores all of those tensions, whether or not I want it to. And I only offer that to you as a preface because there's some of my work is a little heavy, and I'm going to read it to you today. So thank you for your witness. This first one in progress is called 2 Lines. I would tell you of the 2 lines wrapped around a pine tree that announce the red-cockaded woodpecker, and how the fire-browned leaves of the understory mean light and breath. I would show you that these locked gates transform into the long lives of forest. I remember when the government shut its doors and closed the parks, our national spaces of the sacred, and how some foolish men and women came through chainsaw heavy, and just like that, felled hundreds of years of desert memory. I remember taking a lover to a holy space, and how he showed his friends, and how they tossed their beer cans off the edge. I would tell you of a cypress swamp in the ancestral lands of the Nottoway, of the moonlight filtering through the pine, of a hidden flower, only 2 of which exist now, of enslaved bodies buried without namestone, of the old war and the new one coming. I would tell you the GPS coordinates, the passcode for entry, the hidden key. If only you didn't demand this as your birthright. If only you wouldn't carve your name in the bark. If only you could break open your marrow and let loose your wild spirit. If only you were still. If only you might hold the call of the bird above you in palms gentle and bend. And the second poem, still part of Piney Grove series that I'm working on, is called Litany. And as you probably already know, most of us in this room, litany refers to a tedious recital or repetitive series. You arrive 13 days after a new attack in an old war. This is the day a woman is stabbed to death in your country for reasons unrelated to the old war, the authorities tell you in a press conference. In the old war, 1,000 children are murdered, will be murdered, are dying now. So too, the streets become impromptu burial ground for men and women and forests, if there were any left to be given over to the air raid siren night. In your country, You go to the trees. You carry the dead with you. Here there is so much space for the old wars, all of them, that unfold around you like the confetti of bone ash and crumbled buildings, your eyes a teleprompter reading the names of the dead. In your country, there once were wild places too. This was before the old wars. This was before your country, when there were no boundary lines to fight for, the earth and extended spaciousness. Here, though, the trees are tall and arranged in rows, their safety delineated on maps. Here, too, the dead of an old war lie quiet, the forest a hidden grave for stolen bodies. You remember once your father took you to an open field, his forefinger pointed to a single tree. This is a perfect forest, he said. You looked around, desperate for the tangle of the wild, the missing sisters of Ponderosa. Here, fire becomes a guest, invited in from time to time, ushered through the halls of this protected forest. Fire nourishes, brings life. Your country has forgotten this way of knowing. Your country uses fire only to undo. Your country painted the bird's portrait and then took their homes. Another old war. Your country chose another path and paved it. You walk into the trees here. They brush against you, leaving their story written in ash on your clothes. Your fingers are painted in the memory of fire. The land is not your country. This soil belongs to itself. You press your palms to earth, remove your boots. Your naked toes touch soil. You reach through flesh to open rib cage. You give your breath to trees, to earth, this memory of wild. You offer your marrow, your bones to the old ways. This is not a holy tribute. This is the golden light of sun. You unbuckle broken knees and walk. This is a benediction beneath the longleaf pine. And I'm going to share a poem that is not part of the Piney Grove series that was published in the Northern Virginia Review. It is called Ursus Maritimus. You will tell your children of a giant bear, white like snow. Snow, they will ask, and you will pause, try to remember, and fail. You will tell your children who wear little clothing, were born swimming and thirsty of legends. You will define frozen, describe stars and winter. What is cold, they will wonder. And you will see that despite your degrees and the mildewed books lining your walls, despite your broken memories and faded stories, you do not have the words or the science to remember what the world was like before. Will you crumble an apology into their mouths, desperate and eager like fresh, broken birds? So all of that felt really heavy when I was reading this out loud, practicing beforehand. So I wanted to write a poem with a bit of hope in it. My grandma's always like, why can't you write happy poetry? I was like, oh, it's because I need to process my feelings. But anyway, I want to close with this last poem called Still Though the Sacred Persists. In Cypress Swamp, in the Nottoway, and the land returned to those before, and the reclaiming of stories too long left untold, and the grandchildren of the enslaved who remember, and red-cockaded woodpecker and longleaf pine, and the protest against the old wars, and the call for a new return to a long-ago way of knowing, and the renaming of birds, and the felling of statues, and the flight pattern of praying bird, and the call of tree fog, and the memory, and the promise, and the hope in you. Thank you.
Thank you, Indigo Eriksen. It was wonderful to have that preview of your poems for this year. Our next speaker is Brittney Corrigan. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you who are here today. This is really lovely. So the land trust that I was paired with is Finn Rock Reach in the Mackenzie River Land Trust in Oregon. And That area of Oregon was also the site of the Holiday Farm Fire, which started in September of 2020 and was one of the most devastating wildfires in Oregon history. It burned about 173,000 acres. And I had been to the Mackenzie River in the early 90s, and so was very excited to be paired with this piece of land and go back. But when I went back, it was definitely not the land that I remembered, which was lush green and just, yeah, lush green. And now it's a land that's 3 years coming back from a huge wildfire. So that really informed the poems that I wrote about this land. And they're written as a series of 4 persona poems that are linked sonnets. So this is Riparian Chorus for Finn Rock Reach. 1, Mackenzie River. The ghost of my body now rides the land. Round stones scattered in dry grass, streambed scar, where trees remember how human hands dammed and avulsed my meanderings. My far reach channeled to a rapid stem, spring-fed. Once I was flanked by fire, little I could do as the tall ones burned. Ash in my bed, charred trunks of maple, alder, cottonwood, ridged in flame. But their blackened leavings rise within this floodplain, and the fallen make me a new home, an invitation wide and complex, a place my waters can take back. New hands slow the course, tend and improve. No, a living river needs space to move. 2, Western Pond Turtle. A living river needs space to move. No mind for us, who bask and float in sunlit ponds, slow waters our quiet mooring. Go lightly here, our nests dug in the ground. Sit on the banks among the bare grass. We'll ring the surface with our quick hiding, unshell our blotchy faces if you wait. The spring air lilts with birdsong. So few of us dwell here now, our nests exposed for possum, fox, raccoon to find and thieve. Build us a place here in the channel's ward, an island, rocks and logs and shallow depths. Give us a space dense with riverine green, out of the reach of all who'd harm our eggs, laid each to each. 3, Spring Chinook Salmon. Of all who'd harm our eggs, laid each to each, none more cruel than the river's speed and lack. But here, the water's cold and slow. The creek is graveled, cobbled, wood-strewn. We are called back to clean home waters, safe to dig our reds. Pot and tailspill pocket our eggs, a nest in riffled flow. The stones of riverbeds protect our young, become our place of rest. Born of gravels, we come back here to spawn despite the land on fire, despite the drought. The river's pulse is our pulse, dusk to dawn. We feed the river's creatures, call them out from sky and forest, tree and bank and den. Let's slow the water down, begin again. 4, Finn Rock. Let's slow the water down, begin again. How long have I waited here for a flood like the ones from long ago, a time when wetlands spread out from where I've always stood, monolith of volcanic heart. The edge of where road meets reach, sentinel, I've seen the river change. When the fire came, bright hedge of flame that smoked my view, I heard the green world crackle all ablaze. But still the fish came home, and still the river tumbled blue, and still the land forgave, and so nourished what found its way. I see this place anew, shifted and dug and shaped by human hands, the river's body written on the land. And then I'm going to read you a couple short poems from my book Solastalgia, which came out from Jack Legg Press this past summer. And it's all poems dealing with climate change, extinction, and the Anthropocene age. So this is Vanishing. And it starts with an epigraph from the New York Times from September of 2019, which is that nearly 1/3 of the wild birds in the United States and Canada have vanished since 1970, a staggering loss that suggests the very fabric of North America's ecosystem is unraveling. Vanishing. As the world's cities teem with children, flooding our concrete terrains with shouts and signs, as the younglings balance scribbled earths above their heads, stand in unseasonal rain or blistering sun, the birds quietly lessen themselves among the grasslands. No longer a chorus, but a lonely indicating trill. Eastern meadowlark, wood thrush, indigo bunting, their voices ghosts in the chemical landscape of crops. Red-winged blackbirds veer beyond the veil, orioles and swallows, the horned lark and the jay. Color drains from our common home so gradually, we convince ourselves it has always been gray. Little hollow-boned dinosaurs, you who survived the last extinction, whose variety has obsessed scientific minds, whose bodies in the air compel our own bodies to spread and yearn, how we have failed you. The grackles are right to scold us as they feast on our garbage and genetically modified corn. Our children flock into the streets with voices raised, their anger a grim substitute for song. And I'm going to end with, there's a series of poems in this book called the Anthropocene Blessings that were all written for a variety of endangered species, both plant and animal. So this is Anthropocene Blessing, Monarch Butterfly. Milkweed, common tiger, wanderer, you of the poison-filled body, citrine hues of your wings framed in obsidian, flutter of stained glass membranes, alighting on asters, thistles, goldenrod. May your banded instars devour their white-sapped hosts, antelope horn, heartleaf, woolly, whorled. May you find on your long migration every way station, each garden clumsily raised by human hands. May you overwinter free of herbicides from our modified resistant crops. May you not fly headlong into our windshields and grills. May your singular pearly eggs shelter on the undersides of soft-furred leaves, survive to pupate, jay-hang, shed their chrysalis-revealing skins. May your metamorphosis be a lesson for we who are slow to change, we who cannot seem to figure how to create something beautiful from the dissolution we have made. Thank you.
Thank you, Brittney Corrigan. Those were beautiful. Our next reader is Jim Minick.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Liz, for organizing all this. Incredible amount of work, and thank you to other panelists. It's a great honor to share this moment. I live in Virginia, and very, very lucky to live on a farm that is under conservation easement, which is the subject of these poems. And I'm very fascinated by Robin Walls Kimmerer asked her students once, if you love the land, does the land love you? And that back and forth is what I've been playing with lately. So 3 poems, and if time, a very short prose piece. Written. I write the land, and the land writes me. Bean row, elbow ache, grip of toe, this braille of scars I learned to see. But when I'm blind and deaf from the wide world, noisy silence is all I know. Then, if I write the land, will the land write me? This place, its grace washes over me when I forget, when I surrender and go into the braille of scars to learn to see. Bark touch, owl call, ginseng seed. These letters of an alphabet, long and slow, learn me when I write the land, and the land writes me. Listen. The silence on a slope of scree holds all the sound of every rain and snow, this braille an avalanche of how to see. What is left when I hug a tree no longer there? A ghost of wind, glee, and woe that used to write the land when the land wrote me. A braille of scars I learned to see. So the second one is very much a mirror to the first one. It's also Villanelle, kind of in the same vein. Our quiet chorus. We write the land and the land writes us, a resurrection letter posted every day. The music of mycelium, our quiet chorus. The skin between us stretches thin and porous. Maples know this, and so does clay. If we write the land writes us. What is a word? Language limited yet raucous, a finger pointing, wild tongue play, always the miracle of mycelium, quiet chorus. If Earth suddenly was minus us, would it rejoice or mourn or simply say, we forgot to write, so the land stopped writing us? A volcano dances with fire's mad rush, and lava flows like water over all that we say. Eventually, mycelium returns to sing its chorus. Like it or not, the land will survive us. The Last Supper will be heaven to a worm and a jay. Still, if we write the land might write us, and a mouthful of mycelium will be our quiet chorus. So I'm going to read a very short micro essay that just came out today in Salvation South. If you all know that newsletter or news page, it's online news outlet that, well, yeah, I don't think I need to say anything more. It's called The Ticks Are Waiting. 4 to a pinhead, that's small. Pile them together into thick tick nests, tick blooms, tick swarms. Step off the trail in one of these just hatched masses, then spend hours picking them off yourself or your dog, losing count at 300, counting the days to cold weather, knowing that only slows them. To kill them takes -20 degrees, so we stop counting. When we moved to these Virginia mountains 35 years ago, we had dog ticks, just dog ticks, just in the summer. 20 years ago, deer ticks arrived and still do every fall, winter, and spring, so now we have ticks year-round. Summer 2023, 2 new species appeared, Asian longhorn and Lone Star, new species thanks to the old climate change, as in discovered in 1896 old climate change. New ticks mean new carriers of multiple diseases. At least 2 of our dogs have had anaplasmosis, while 5 have had Lyme. One morning, our biggest couldn't use his back legs, just wag and fall over because of Lyme. The dogs get a Lyme vaccine. We can't. Between my wife and me, we've had Lyme 5 times, plus a nasty skin infection. The Lyme will lay you out and burn you up. The Lyme will inflame your whole body, including your brain, bringing on 11 days of migraines. The climate crisis lives inside us. We are afraid to go for a walk. I've seen maps saying where we live is a good refuge from the rising seawater and increasing heat of climate change. The ticks already figured that out. The ticks are here waiting. And then one, I think, am I right with time? I forgot to turn my timer on. So one last poem, again, back to that reciprocity and what does it mean to live on a place, on a farm? And the title is, What If We Learn at Last That the Land Stops Forgiving? To the men who logged this land in 1965, leaving tire ruts clogged with leaves and scarred oaks hollow and now tall, arching over skid trails, green alleys I hike, pressing down with each step the already compacted soil that a lifetime later still grows nothing. For all of that, thank you. To the men who logged this land when they came home from the war, the civil one, to find old growth so ripe it took a day to fell just one, red, white, and black oak, poplar, maple, chestnut, walnut, and slippery elm. You milled each massive trunk here by the creek, bog too soft, so you built a timber bridge of chestnut poles and left slab heaps, rail spikes, and spindly logs below hillsides stumped and suddenly empty. Rain lifted the powdered soil and runneled it down to bury your debris in mud so deep the wood purpled instead of rotted, until 125 years later, we dug a pond, uncovering logs salvaged into storied lumber. Thank you. To the men who quarried another hillside in 1795, poor whites and poorer slaves and bossmen yelling to dig for iron, for zinc, for lead, for ore of any color. But you found none, your horses exhausted, your shovels ringing empty. Instead of mines, you left ravines 30 coffins deep and bare wallow pits, and now 200 years later, white pines tower alongside, filling each slough needle by needle. But still each trench is barren, still no soil, still thank you all. And to this dirt, who daily reminds us what death tastes like, and to these stumps who sprout chestnut wands to blight year after year, and to this poplar we gouged while building our road, who still offers us shade and air, rain patter on leaves, and forgiveness if we begin to believe. For all of this and more, thank you. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jim Minick. That was a great reminder to be grateful to our lands.